Welcome back to the Dave and Bill show. We're here at Forest Hill after crossover. Crossover ended yesterday for the General Assembly, which means the first half of the General Assembly is over with. All the Senate bills have crossed over to the House now. All the House bills have crossed over to the Senate. We've got a few bills that we're going to make comments on today. Some that were good bills, pro-law enforcement bills that didn't make it. Some bills we feel that were bad bills that did make it, that we're still trying to convince people that, there's some things in here that we need to really focus on to get out, because it's going to be detrimental to the people that work for the department and other law enforcement agencies. I will mention one thing before we start into those bills is the budget comes out on Sunday. They're right now working on that budget language, so we have a little bit of time before bills are starting to be heard again. We've been advocating and talking to legislators about the budget amendment that we requested, the State Police Association requested from Senator Carol Foy, that would take the first $40,000 of your retirement for retirees and for those that are looking towards retirement now, and make it non-taxable. So that amendment is before the budget committee now. It'll be deliberated through this whole process of the budget, and we'll know hopefully Sunday as to whether it makes it out. But that'll be a huge benefit to our retirees and those that are looking to retire in the near future. And it will be a very handsome reward for those that are looking to come to work for the state police, that when they get retirement age, that'll be exempt.
And Bill, it's important to point out that on that tax exemption, that that $40,000 will comport with what military personnel are already eligible to receive in the form of a tax exemption.
That's where we got the language from,
Exactly.
From what already exists in the code for the military.
Mm-hmm. And it's been a challenging session, to say the very least.
To say the least.
It's been difficult. It's been difficult to try to transmit our message, transmit what's best for law enforcement. I think as a general proposition, there have been a lot of pro-law enforcement bills or even pro-public safety bills that just have not gotten any traction. They've died on the vine. Some of them, others have been purposefully killed. And I'd like to start with a few of those. In terms of bills that have failed, one measure that we supported, there were a variety of bills in this context, and that was enhanced retirement benefits for dispatchers.
Right.
This has been a multi-year campaign to try to get enhanced benefits for dispatchers. And again, it failed this year. So House Bill 204 and House Bill 585, these would have allowed enhanced dispatcher retirement, but each of those measures have died. House Bill 227, this was a bill which would have allowed transitional health care for the dependents of somebody who died in the line of duty. And it seems like a no-brainer. However, this bill also failed. And so while there are some benefits that may be provided in that transition period between LODA and state health care, this bill would have designed a policy where we do absolutely give it to the benefits and the dependents of somebody who's died in the line of duty. But again, that measure died. And then one other bill that also did not pass the General Assembly this year, which was, I think, really an important bill. This is Pew Kent's bill, and it would have allowed re-enrollment in the state health care one time within 5 years post-retirement. This was an issue that's come up. We've actually heard from some people that this has happened to, where they leave state health care after retirement. They try to go back into state health care, and then they're advised, nope, you can't do that. Law prevents you from doing it. This bill would have allowed at least one time to come back into the state health care post-retirement within 5 years. But again, that measure died.
And I want to speak to another one that died. That's kind of along the same lines is the workers' compensation bill, House Bill 406. And it was introduced by Delegate Reed, and it was to be able to have spousal benefits under workers' compensation if a law enforcement officer was disabled from being able to do the job and the spouse had to stay home, take care of that individual, then they would qualify for some workers' comp benefits. And, that would have been very helpful. And the amazing thing is, we're watching so many bills come through that have these humongous price tags on them. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars. And these were two bills. Hillary Pugh Kent's, Delegate Pugh Kent's bill that David mentioned had $20,000 price tag on it. This one had $108,000 price tag on it, and they continue it. They killed the bill basically and say it was due to the amount of money that it cost.
Yeah.
But yet we see all these other bills, and we're going to talk about one, especially collective bargaining, that has close to 55 million just to set it up. And, that one goes and advances through. Not to mention what it's going to cost the localities.
Mm-hmm. And, Bill, that's an important point on what is it really going to cost. And we've talked about this in our video before. With respect to House Bill 1263 and Senate Bill 378, these are the two collective bargaining bills. We've received a fiscal impact. That fiscal impact has been evaluated by JLARC. They did a study on the fiscal impact. There's been a lot of conversation during the General Assembly about what it's really going to cost for collective bargaining. The initial fiscal impact started at about $100 million. Mm-hmm. That's just to set the thing up. And then it's been backed down in two ways. One was they took home health care workers out of collective bargaining. That would have been anybody that's paid with Medicare funds. They would have been included. They've been excluded from the bill.
Which is a huge group of people. They were there.
A ton of people. And so they've been excluded, and then they've also altered the cost in some ways with respect to, rather than it being a separate agency, they've stuck it under DHRM.
Right.
Which was a cost-saving measure. But to your point, Bill, it still is potentially going to cost, upwards of more than $50 million just to set the program up.
And think about that 1 second. When you mentioned that they put it under DHRM, how well does that work for you? We get calls all the time about problems with DHRM. Mm-hmm. So now throw all that in the mix of it, and you're going to exacerbate those problems dramatically because of how this has to be organized and set up.
It certainly is going to create some issues. But the reality is cost it was the conversation of the day as it came to collective bargaining. There were some other things, and we'll talk about those maybe in a subsequent video. But right. The reality was cost was front and center in terms of collective bargaining. Much of the conversation dealt with the cost to localities. And, those numbers were huge. In fact, we've talked about it before, is that Chesterfield County continues to state that their fiscal impact is going to be rather large, and $200 million. But the reality is this, that the cost will be large because really all we're talking about is implementation here. When we say $50 million, that's to set this thing up. The reality is that the cost is going to be much greater than that, both in terms of how this thing plays out, any added measure in terms of benefits or salary, all those things are going to add to the cost of collective bargaining ultimately. And of course, that's also in light of a record number of additional new taxes. So yes, to balance the budget, obviously, to pay for these large expenditures, the smaller ones are being cast aside.
Well, and I think there was a comment made on the floor during the debate that if you just took Chesterfield alone, what it's going to cost them to establish this. If you have an average home in Chesterfield County of $500,000, then your property tax increase to pay for this is going to be an additional $1,000 on your property tax. That's not to mention the cost that's going to hit your income taxes, your sales taxes, all the other taxes that you're going to have to pay to implement this. And this whole session messaging from one side has been about affordability. And these bills that we're mentioning here definitely doesn't have an affordability framework that will help the average family. And the other thing is I found amazing is as a police officer, if you're in rural areas, you're very sensitive to the community. You're involved in the community. You know your neighbors. You know the people that you go to school with, your kids go to school with, all the people that you see at your church, at social events. How are these people going to look at you if you're a teacher, a firefighter, a police officer, and these bargaining agreements come out to where their property taxes and all the taxes that they got to pay just to meet the demands of a union is going to look like, and how are you going to feel around those people knowing that that's what increased it? Plus, you're going to be paying it too.
It's going to be awkward.
So it'll be taken out of one pocket and put in another, and I don't think the net gain is going to be that great.
Certainly not considering that there'll be added cost for the people who participate in the unionization,
Right.
the law enforcement, the government employees, all of them, including the state troopers, and those costs will be somewhere in the range of 1 to 2% of your gross pay each and every single month to the union in order to have unionization. Bill, let's talk about a couple other bills that passed the General Assembly. House Bill 273. This was Delegate Helmer's bill for rendering aid. We talked about that in a video earlier.
When we talk about these, though, think about these as the ultimate way to defund the police without taking money away.
Absolutely. It certainly is. And so, and again, to remind you on that rendering aid bill, there's a provision in there that provides individual civil liability for an officer that fails to render aid.
And they use willful misconduct language that's not defined, so it could mean anything, which is very dangerous.
So that that measure passed out. Senate Bill 173. We haven't talked really about this one on a video, but this measure prohibited guns in hospitals, and so we spoke to this bill, and the reason why is because it creates a gap for law enforcement officers. So there is an exemption in the bill. It allows for the possession and carrying a gun into a hospital when you're actively on duty.
In the official capacity of your duty, you can carry it.
Right. And but there is no exception for carrying a gun into a hospital if you're off duty.
Or if you're not in the official capacity of your duty, there's a difference.
Right. Yeah, you just happen to be there at the hospital,
right.
and you're actively serving, but you still would be in violation of the law.
Or if you break your hand and you are working and you go by the hospital and go to the emergency room to get an X-ray, and you're in uniform, you're still not.
And it's a serious penalty. It's a Class 1 misdemeanor.
Right.
Potentially jailable offense for an off-duty police officer or somebody who's not acting in their official capacity to carry a gun into a hospital.
Which is going to decertify you.
Potentially so.
Yeah.
And so we asked that there be a provision for off-duty officers to be able to carry their gun. Bill and I, we were theorizing about all the variety of ways that you could potentially find yourself in a situation. One of which would be being involved in an accident. You're carrying concealed, right? You're transported to the hospital. Now, all of a sudden, you potentially could face some criminal liability for having carried a gun where it was otherwise perfectly okay.
Unless you surrender the gun to the tow truck driver or the
Yeah, leave it with your
or
car.
leave it in your car or whatever. But the other thing about that bill is that there's a provision that exempts people who are on ECO and TDOs.
Yeah.
So if you got an ECO or TDO, um,
Uh,
you got a concealed weapon, you
yeah.
can't be charged.
And it's not just a defense; it's a complete exemption. Which of course, to the patrons' statement with respect to that, they specifically wanted that in the bill because they may not know what's going on or know that it was illegal. I think that that's a real stretch. I mean, that's the very person that you do not want to have a gun in public. And the reality is this: you do want a law enforcement officer to carry off duty because, like one legislator said, the government, I mean, the public expects that a police officer, even off duty, is going to act in a situation if they're able to do so.
Because they consider you always in the official capacity of your duty. They don't consider you not reacting or acting in a situation like that. And I'm going to go back because this is just a little bit of legislative history. All the time that I was in both the House and Senate, bills that were introduced were debated. They were debated. People opposed, people supported. Your time is very limited there because you're going from committee to committee. So you just expect that there's going to be people when you introduce this bill and present the bill to line up to oppose you or to support you that you may never talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward to today, both of these patrons are very offended that you oppose their bill with not telling them prior to coming down there. Well, we're trying to keep up with so many bad bills that it's impossible to even get in and see them. Number one, and number two is that's not the way the process is set up. The process is debate. It's a deliberative body for you to debate the issues, and instead of saying, well, this could be a problem when you bring it up in committee. It's I'm upset with you. I'm not doing anything. This is the way the bill is going to go. If you wanted to talk to me, you should talk to me prior to this bill being introduced. Well, that is not, ladies and gentlemen, the way the deliberative process works. It's never worked that way. And there's a new mentality of legislators who expect you to come and give them a heads up that you're going to oppose or support their bill. And you only got 2 minutes with all the people that are lined up to speak for or against it, and that's to cut the debate off.
Yes. And there really was no debate. And interestingly enough, as you point out in this example, Bill, when it was pointed out that the public expects law enforcement, if you're in a position where you could actually do something because you're carrying concealed off duty, when that was pointed out, the patron acknowledged that there was a need for that, right, and said, "I will consider that as the bill progresses forward. Pass it out. I'll consider it." There was no consideration. There was actually no deliberation. The bill just continued on in this very form that it was, and it is today, without any exception for off-duty police officers.
And to that extent, the comment got back to me, which was not made to me nor David, that we weren't the state police, that the state police had not come to them and told them that this was an issue. And in my defense, I assured them, I'm not the agency. That is correct. I represent the men and women that work for this agency, and they see it as a problem. But yet they are not concerned about what the men and women in this agency care about. They're more concerned about what the agency themselves tells them. And they'll always say, well, we're talking about mental hospitals. But keep in mind, most every hospital has a mental ward, and every emergency room has to receive
And it also
TDOs and
details
ACEs.
emergency rooms
It
too,
does.
Bill.
It's
So
very,
it is essentially the
the
hospital.
hospital, and it doesn't confine it to an emergency room.
Right.
It is the hospital itself. So we see it as a potential problem, and one that you need to be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Another bill, or actually two bills, the House Bill 1482 and Senate Bill 352. These were both bills that we've talked about already this session in a video, and that's the face mask bill or the anti-ice bill. And both of these passed. They are not conformed, but they pretty much have the same provisions and exemptions currently. And so, again, that creates some civil liability along with a bunch of exemptions. I mean, the exemptions go on for a while in terms of everything that could be exempted: cold weather,
Motorcycle helmet, diving
yeah,
gear,
tactical team operations. Like I was telling Bill, we were reading through that, and just to bring you up to speed on it, because the two bills are not the same. And as we read through them, I said to Bill, I said, if you got to have that many exemptions, it's probably bad public policy. And so, and the reality is that it is bad public policy, and the only people that in law enforcement that are going to have to deal with this is local and state police.
So that's another thing, and there was a great debate on the floor yesterday about these bills, and it was brought up that you're sending a bill to the floor with some language that may or may not be acceptable, and then you get it to the floor and you put 5 floor amendments on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was pointed out in that debate, 1 through 5, how it is a defund the police effort. And I think that's what is concerning about us with the transparency going on in the General Assembly today. There is none. And if they have to debate it, if it's in committee and it looks like it's something that could cause problems during that period of time, they'll just send a minor tweak to a law to the floor, and then they'll put floor amendments on it to make it one of the worst bills that you've seen in the General Assembly. And ladies and gentlemen, that is not how you operate as a lawmaker, because that's how all of your constitutional rights get stripped,
Mm-hmm.
is at the last minute. And so we are concerned about what's coming out of this General Assembly.
Yeah.
It isn't because of the political flavor of the day. It's because of the laws that are being legislated here. And especially for law enforcement.
Mm-hmm. It is. My interpretation of many of the bills that are being passed are that they're anti-police. There's a great number of anti-police measures. Of course, this is from the very party that purports to support the police and of course their ability to be able to fend for themselves by negotiating through collective bargaining. But that alone is not going to secure their job in a way that it's going to make it palatable and successful in terms of tenure. The reality is it's going to make your job harder, and their consolation prize is that you might get some more money, but you're going to spend some money along the way.
Well, I found it interesting in the collective bargaining bill when asked of the patron, is there a provision to prevent any of the dues that's collected for the union that's established from going to political candidates? And he said none that he's aware of. So it was obvious that is part of the essence behind it, is to collect all these dues and be able to use those dues for a certain political party.
100%. And that is exactly what the process will do. Is it'll create a cycle of money into political campaigns and then back out of unions and through the process. People who they extract the money from are the workers. The workers will be hit with the excise tax, and that will ultimately become funding for both the unions to grow and for the politicians. Um, so I did want to mention one other bill, just to transition a little bit. House Bill 1314. This was Maldonado's bill. This was state liability for deprivation of rights when acting under color of law. We talked about this bill before. It is not going forward this year, but it's not dead. It was continued over to 2027. So we don't have to deal with that for the time being. But that bill would have potentially bankrupted law enforcement in terms of the ability to sue and sue under a lesser standard on the state level for deprivation of rights under color of law. What we would otherwise know, as a federal lawsuit.
There was another one that was introduced by Senator Surabel that would prohibit for localities, the insuring of an individual.
Yeah, it would have created a waiver of sovereign immunity for localities for law enforcement functions, which also would have bankrupted localities because it also prevented any exception in their insurance policy.
Right.
So essentially, it was again another way to extract money out of law enforcement, which it seems to be the theme of the day. And then on the other side of things, anything that was a measure to try to address crime or to support victims, those things went by the wayside.
Right.
During this General Assembly so far.
And those bills were introduced mainly from Senator Salam, Senator Surabel, Senator Williams-Grave, Delegate Hernandez, Delegate Helmer, Delegate Maldonado.
Mm-hmm.
I think those were the 6 legislators that we saw that were having so many of these bills to attack law enforcement. And here's the bottom line. They will defend themselves to say, we don't like what we see going on with ICE today and the way that they're treating people. Well, okay, if that's an issue, you need to take it up with the federal government, because these laws that you're trying to put into place doesn't affect them. It affects you, the state, because they're under a supremacy clause with the federal government. So they're acting under the federal guidelines that they're acting under. Now you've got too many playbooks here that you're trying to figure out when you're reacting in a tense situation in a split second. Which one am I supposed to be operating under? And so it really, these 6 legislators have concentrated, with the help of their party, their support of their party, the support of the majority, ability to go after law enforcement, because they're trying to create political points with their base, saying, "Oh, look what we did to prevent ICE agents from doing what happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota, here in Virginia." Well, I'm here to tell you, it doesn't do a thing to them.
No,
but it hurts you as a law enforcement officer.
That's exactly right, Bill. And I did also want to mention that we kind of we hit on collective bargaining a little bit because it is part of the bigger conversation. But I did want to point out to our viewers that with respect to the collective bargaining bills, they are conformed with one another. So we know exactly what we're going to expect if the governor is to sign this. And so while they passed both houses, they're not yet engrossed. They're not in the hands of the governor. We don't know exactly what will happen when it goes to the governor, but we know that it's a big, and we've conveyed our message to them and how it will affect the state police. And I've put together some materials that will really walk us through exactly what that bill does, what it's going to look like to the VSP employee, and what you can expect in terms of changes. And it is a huge structural change in the way that things will work at VSP and with respect to all state governments, because ultimately You can't get this genie back in the bottle. Once it's out, it's going to happen. And so we'll bring that to you in a subsequent video, some understanding and some time frames. The outward time frame is going to be July 1, 2028. If this thing passes, that will be the point in time going forward where collective bargaining begins to happen in Virginia. But we'll give you a full breakdown on that. That's going to be some content in and of itself for a video.
And for our viewers and for our members, just be mindful that we still look at how this framework is set up. We still look at the options that we have to try in an attempt with the governor to get the state police out. And in the long run, you still got an intervening election that takes place in 2027 before this goes into effect in 2028 that could change the way the outcome of this will happen. But we're also looking at, okay, what if it does happen? We've been here for 50 years. We've been established. We've worked for our members and did everything possible to represent our members. Just because this happens doesn't mean that we're going to back off and not fight through this thing and try to give you the option to the best representative that you can have if this does go through, if they accomplish their goal.
And that is our objective, is to keep fighting, and for the troopers, for the members, for the Virginia State Police as a whole, because that has been our mission for 50 years, and it will continue to be our mission going forward. So great point there, Bill, in terms of where we're at. We may very likely be forced to operate in this environment, but it doesn't mean that we won't stop advocating for what's best for law enforcement.
But if we do have to operate in this environment, we will take a different approach,
yes,
than most of the other units that may want to garnish your support.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's all that I have on my list, Bill. So,
well, we just wanted to come to you. It's crossover. Like I said, we're at the midway point of the General Assembly session. It's been a very tough session. It's been a new era, I guess you could say, for the General Assembly. I can't say it's one of the better ones. Regardless of your political leanings, it's one that I feel that has cut off debate, no deliberations, and no considerations from those who represent those in the field. If it's not from the agency, which, again, I am very clear to point out, we're not the agency. We represent the troopers and the people who work for the agency and the things that they are very concerned about. There's no way that we're going to take a position on what the agency needs to be taking positions on, because we are not them. And I think that they are starting to realize that, and they use that to their advantage. But we're going to keep at it. We're going to keep fighting. We're not going to give up. Like I said, we're troopers. We'll adapt and we'll make it work if they force it on us.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and please be on the lookout. We're going to bring you some additional information with respect to collective bargaining, and for the remainder of the session as well.
Right.
Thanks. Take care.
Thank you.